And I'm about to sneeze. That's crazy. Let's get it.
Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. I wanna fly like an eagle to the sea. Fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an eagle till I'm free. I go through the revolution, feed the babies who don't have enough to eat. Shoe the children with no shoes on their feet. Help the people living in the street.
Yeah. What's going on out there in the land, y'all? It's your brother FRE, free. You know the acronym, Fat Rat Evolve, man. Check me out on YouTube. Fat Rat, one word, space, evolved. Hey, today I just wanted to tap in with y'all because the Diddy sentencing phase is scheduled for Friday. And I know it was a controversial subject to a lot of y'all on the morality piece, right? About Diddy and his freakish behavior, some of the things that came out in this trial and all of that. And my focus was never that, right? My focus was always that here's an example being made of what we thought was a powerful black man, right? I thought, right? And I saw Diddy, and I still see him to some degree as wielding a little bit of power, right? But when things like this begin to happen, when, he can't get a bail, right? He can't get, certain things done in his custody. All of these people are coming out, and it turns into this sordid, this raunchy, God, what do you call that, man? Exploration, right, of this man's sexual habits and sexual behavior and sexual interactions with different women and stuff like that, man. And one of the top brothers that I like on the coverage of the Diddy trial all of the way that it was going on is a brother from New York named Sean G, man. He's a good brother, man. He done been to the feds and, he's kind of a soldier too, man, if you pay attention to him. But he one of them brothers like you'll get him twisted right and he'll be on you. One of them type of brothers. I love brothers like that, man. But he covered the trial, man, and extensively and intensively. From cover to cover, man. It was in the trial, was bringing out legal documents for you to take a look at. And his is called The Podcast with Soul. I recommend that y'all, log on to that brother from NY, man. Give NY some love, man. You know what I mean? That Bronx, that Brooklyn, you know what I mean? That Harlem. Give them some love, man. One of the things I'm going to say for me, man, that was most intriguing that I didn't know initially about Diddy. And I've been in hip hop. I've done my own, music and hip hop. I've been in the circuit of hip hop back in the 90s, you know what I mean? Before Big broke out and all that, man. I was in hip hop, man. I was doing my thing. And Flashlight Therapy, if you go to my YouTube page, you'll see like my video, and Imara was my, rap handle. And I tried to maintain a degree of consciousness in my music, man. So it was a whole theme behind my music, man. Following the name of brother. Hey Mandy, how you doing? It was following the theme of a leader for the Republic of New Africa named Imara. And brother was kind of a conscious brother, man. And I kind of fashioned that after what Monster Cody was doing with the Republic of New Africa, and that embracing consciousness and taking that train of thought. And I studied brother a little bit. So when I did my music, I kind of tried to weave some of the, concepts that he shared in consciousness in my music. So if you look on my page, Fat Rat Evolved on YouTube, you'll see that. So that's just to say I was in hip hop, but I never knew that Sean Combs had a father by the name of, not that he didn't have a father, but he had a father by the name of Melvin Combs, who turns out to be the driver for Frank Lucas, who was the driver for Bumpy Johnson. So this Harlem thing and this bloodline, right? Gangster ties and mob ties, black mob ties, and Harlem ride kind of hard and do things a certain way, man. They kind of come into the fray as, somebody who you got to respect in the underworld, right? So when I found out that Melvin Combs was the father of Sean Combs, right? And that he was associated directly with Frank Lucas, it kind of explains some things to me, even though they say Melvin Combs went out with like kind of a jacket. He was involved in some telling or some snitching and stuff like that. And then they, ultimately unalived the brother, right? But this was his 3-year-old son at the time he was unalived. And just knowing that history, man, I can't say, what's up, Chin? I can't say emphatically, right? I ain't no freak like that, right? When you get in a personal relationship and a personal sexual relationship with a woman, and all of those things are supposed to be personal, right? And we just follow, we damn near be, in truth, man, until you come into consciousness, you be damn near like trying to be a porn star in the bed with your woman, or with a couple of women in this menage a trois culture and all of these things. And it's way more sordid, way worse now than it was when I was coming up in the early 80s. You know what I mean? In the mid 70s, early 80s. When I was coming up, man, it's a way different experience according to how I hear the young brothers talk, man, and the young sisters act, right? It's just different. And it's like the morality is you close your every day in the culture, a layer of the onion is being peeled back to uncivility, to make you uncivil, right? To make you kind of a freak, so to speak, right? That's in the culture. Really, freaking is a cultural norm, right? You see how they used Megan Thee Stallion to do the booty shaking thing on the Democratic National Convention? That was insane, man. But this is where we are in the society as a whole. It's a freakish society. So when you start trying to shock people by the activities that Diddy had going on, being worth, somewhere between 600 and 800 million, right? Having your own private jets and having access to all of these different, model women, and, women damn near worship you when you got that kind of power and money and stuff like that. Y'all know how y'all are, man. We gotta quit pretending it to be like it's something else, right? It's really that, right? Your fandom, you're starstruck, right? And you're willing to compromise all of your principles and your morals. You've probably compromised them to a high degree before you even walked in a room where Diddy was at and had anything to do with him. You fiend the opportunity to be around somebody like that. I know women like that, right? So it's not hard for me to get beyond the part where they're trying to allege there's something like Diddy got going on sexually that amounts to him being any worse, right, than anybody else in this freakish society. It's easy for me to move through that, right? So I just wanted to weigh in and say, how do y'all feel about the sentencing phase? Diddy knocked him down in that trial, man. And it never should have been brought if you think about how law works, right? And I'm not a legal professional, disclaimer, right? I don't profess to be a legal professional in any capacity. I can't offer any legal advice or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, when you think about how law works, right? How they apply this law. So in order for you to get to the racketeering, sex trafficking, right? Let me rephrase that. In order for you to get to the Mann Act, you used racketeering and sex trafficking, right? To get to the Mann Act. And if you know the history of the Mann Act, that was what they did to Jack Johnson, the famous, black boxer who had this reputation for riding hard with white women, right? And he would go across state lines with, kind of these concubines that was white women, right? I remember reading a thing about Jack Johnson, and he had this sports car, man, and he was flying down the highway or whatever, right? And the trooper, got behind him and pulled him over, man. And he was like, man, you doing like 3 or 4 times? What's up, Angel? You doing 3 or 4 times the speed limit, right? And Jack Johnson said, how much is the ticket? He said, well, I guess the ticket was something like $20. So Jack Johnson reached in his pocket and gave the state trooper dude like $40. He said, no, the ticket's only $40. He said, I know. He said, the ticket's only $20. Jack Johnson said, I know. The other 20 is from when I'm on my way back. You ain't got to stop me. You know what I mean? Because he going to do what he going to do. I'm going to speed like without regard for what you talking about, man. Take your issue and keep moving. That was Jack Johnson's attitude towards law, right? Which is, I think, appropriate. If you ask me, I believe that was, appropriate, right? So fast forward, they applied a law really on the basis of what Jack Johnson was doing to try to put a stop to him because he was mocking them with they women, right? So that's how the law began. And it hasn't been, so many people who've been tried for the Mann Act. There haven't been people who have been given any lengthy sentences and stuff like that for the Mann Act. You go, and like I said, the judge Submaranian said, y'all go back to the DA and, the defense. Y'all go back and find me law related to the Mann Act. And if you want to form an argument on the basis of what you find, give me the law. Right? And it ain't much to find. They went back 100 years. They went back 100 years and said, we can't really find anything that, justifies, the type of exposure you're giving Diddy. Right? It's supposed to work a certain way, man. Like, I know it's the money, the fame, the power, the things that were alleged in the actual trial, which are things that you can't use to aggravate or mitigate the sentencing guidelines, or looking at certain things like violence that came out in the trial. The Diddy incident in the hotel, man, where he beat the sister up. That's horrible, man. That's terrible, right? We don't know the surrounding circumstances behind it. We know what was said. Diddy didn't take the trial. He didn't take the stand and make his case. But he had already given her, I believe it was $20 million in a settlement about that. That's a lot of money for a little ass whooping, man. For you to gotta understand what I'm saying. See, we can't talk about these things like we dealing with purists. We not dealing with nuns and people in monasteries and, you know, this type of thing. We dealing with street women, right? We dealing with women with the type of ambitions that make them compromise their morals and their principles, right? We dealing with fans, fanatics, right? We dealing with clout chasers and, you know, power chasers. We're not dealing with, you know, chaste, you know, and virtuous women. That ain't what we talking about. And it exists. You know, prostitution exists, y'all. In case you don't know, you know what I mean? Prostitution really exists. It's in Facebook now. You sitting down, you know, scrolling down your Facebook, and a naked body pop up on your Facebook now, right? You gonna look. If you natural, you gonna look. You gotta move past that. But they're trying to court you to be, into porn, so to speak, right? But you know, Diddy's no exception when it comes to being subject to the whims of the lower nature, the desired nature. He ain't no damn exception. Money don't make you better at that. It makes you worse, right? And I just look at it that way. I don't look at it in the moral arena. I look at it in the legal arena, right? And I say to myself, what the hell does all of this stuff y'all talking about? And I'm not an anti-Trumper, right? I don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, so I can look objectively at a Donald Trump. J-Mont, what's good? I can look objectively at a Donald Trump, and I was looking at that trial they had on Donald Trump for the woman that was alleging different things about him, and all of these same things. Well, he did this, and it was sex this, and it was sex that, and sex this, but that's not the trial. That's not what you're on trial for. But they're trying to indirectly use all of these nasty activities, right? Behind closed doors, right? Nasty activities, filthy, sexual, sordid activities to justify locking a man up. I don't agree with that. I think that's way beyond the pale, even in the case of Donald Trump, man. Same thing. And I actually believe Diddy would already be out if it wasn't for the fact that he said some things trying to appeal to the Democratic Party, and then he was also starting his own political party. That's another thing. He got into it with the people about the liquor, and, you know, those are powerful people. They say, I forget the people's name, but he got into it with them, and then he was trying to start his own political party, right? So then you get on the radar of powerful people who actually wield power, right? So you're looking at people who are literally wielding power when this man comes out and says, listen, I give you I go to sentencing in 60 days. Let's just be hypothetical. In 60 days, you're going to sentence me, right? I'm going to give you $50 million and put an ankle bracelet on me and go to my house and stay in a place where you can monitor for me the next 60 days. And you tell me no, and I'm offering a bond of $50 million. And the point is that I'm supposed to pose some type of flight risk. This is not about me being a flight risk then, right? It can be about me being a flight risk. So what is it really about? I mean, let me know. I don't really know what it is. Let me know. How you doing, Karen Steen? Let me know what it is. Go in the comments, right? Let me know. Give me an education. I'm listening. My ears is up, right? I'm trying to understand why it is that it's all the way 3 days from the man's sentencing, right? They've proven I believe he's going to win the case outright on appeal. But I believe that this is what I think is going to happen in the courtroom Friday. Let me just give you all that, right? The DA has made an argument that they want to give him 11 years, 135 months, which is 11 years and about 3 months, right? And their argument, the basis for that is saying that there were so many aggravating circumstances in the trial, right? The trial brought out aggravating circumstances, and he's non-repentant. Like, they can read his heart, his mind, and say, he's non-repentant. They can determine that, even though they're not giving us any supporting activity since he's been in prison to indicate he's non-repentant. In fact, to the contrary, he's running programs inside the prison that would show, and then he's going into, and he's done like a drug program and different stuff like that, that would prove to the contrary that he is repentant, that he is striving to turn his life around, that he does, he is showing some degree of remorse for his level of involvement in harming. Giving somebody $20 million is kind of a big step towards repentance to me, right? $20 million? Really? Okay. So tell me where I may be some area in my thinking. I might be sideways, backwards, or whatever. But what do y'all think? Because they talking about 11 years. That's what the DA is saying. The prosecutor, the DA, the defense is saying he shouldn't get no more than 15 months time served. Because in the feds, they have like a sentencing guideline. This is the range of your exposure to the prison time, right? And it's based on different factors, right? And those factors are listed. And let's just say, and without getting real specific, what's up, Rick? Without getting real specific about what the particular factors are, let's just say there's 10 factors, right? And every one factor amounts to another year that you should get. Let's just give it like that so we could do it mathematically, right? So from 1 to 10, right? Diddy doesn't have any. The base sentence is, I believe in this case, his exposure is something like 12 to 15 months or 13 to 18 months, something like that, right? It's very low in comparison to 135 months, right? How are they getting to? Because what they're saying is, in the saying the aggravating factors are things like he's non-repentant, intangible stuff that's like, philosophical or subjective. It's existing in your mind. You can't objectively prove anything to say bring any evidence to say he's non-repentant. You get Cassie on the stand and you get her to plead crying the crocodile tears. These are actors and actresses, right? And they're coming in crying crocodile tears. Oh, he should go to prison for life for what he did to me, yada yada yada. He's such a horrible person, yada yada yada. But they have text messages from this same person, right? As recent as, I believe, 2020 or 19, texting, and in the trial it came out that Cassie said, was asked, did you love Diddy? And she said yes. And yes, I thought he was, my boyfriend, my lover. And then they asked her, well, do you still love him? And she paused and said, I love what our past was, right? Knowing damn well, man, Diddy came out and, you was dealing with him after you got married to this other guy. These are text messages that you're sending after you had already got married to this other guy and got pregnant by this other guy. And you still communicating with Diddy about how you feel about him. Come on, man. Money and power, y'all. Be realistic. But you're going to base aggravating factors on things that came out in a trial. And it's kind of like blurring the line, right? Because what part of the trial are we talking about? Because you can't use any part of the trial that he was acquitted on. So you conflated all of these different issues and blurred all of the lines so that you could come out with something, right? Everybody doesn't think critically enough to separate each component, like each bifurcation, like breaking the issues down in separate categories, dealing with them individually and independently. They weren't able to do that in its entirety, because had they been able to do that, they would have been able to deduce that, listen, if he's not guilty for racketeering, sex trafficking, right? Which the federal statute allows them to go back, I believe it's 10 years to bring these cases, right? And then the federal statute had lapsed on the Mann Act if you weren't able to bring that in conjunction with the other charges. You would have had to, you couldn't have brought the Mann Act, right? So you use these other charges, the sex trafficking, the RICO Act, the sex trafficking and all of that, right? You use those charges, right, to bring the charges of the Mann Act, right? You brought them in with that. When you lose on the RICO charges, the federal statute for bringing the Mann Act has already passed its limit. So you really don't have a basis for a Mann Act charge. Y'all know that, right? But in light of the fact that you have such a flimsy case there, right, you still are entertained. A judge could have already dealt with the motions to dismiss this case. They've already been submitted to him. He's already had enough information to weigh in on that, and he's decided not to. This is what indicates to me that he has it in his heart and mind to go as hard as he possibly can on Diddy, and that being something that's personal. And it's not personal based on what came out in the trial. I believe it was personal from the very beginning. The reason I say that is because he was never given the bail. Nothing was proven when he was asking for bail when he was initially arrested. It was just what was brought for trial. It was, what was charged and alleged. Nothing was proven. So at that point, there's a bias in not allowing him to get the bail. Right? And we talking about the people who found bin Laden, man. Where did he go? Bin Laden had more money and access to systems of intel than Diddy ever could think about. Right? He was actually in some case, some information that's coming out, they saying bin Laden was a CIA operative trained by them to destabilize Russia. It's the big homie calling me, man. Let me tell him I'm on here. He could jump on if he want to. I'm on, man. If you want to come on, man. You could jump on, big homie, if you want to get on here with me. Let me tell him right quick, y'all. Excuse me. So I'm asking, and I'm about to, because they say, I just started coming on with TikTok as well, in addition to my YouTube. But I'm going to wrap it up. What's up, Chris? Hey, I'm going to wrap it up, but I just wanted to know, and y'all ain't weighing in, you just listening to me, but I'm trying to share some information with you. But when we get to Friday, I think if they can, okay, I'm going to call you in a minute. If they can give him 11 years and use some kind of angle or justification to do it, I believe that's what they're going to do. Or somewhere in between, the minimum, which is his true exposure, and try to manipulate some kind of, and it's going to be a trip to watch and hear what the judge uses for justification. But know of a surety, it's going to be overturned. They're going to overturn this case when it gets to, in the appellate court, he's going to win. There's no way you can even have it as a case, really, One of the charges you can't even bring because of the timeline ran out on it. But I think that's what they're gonna do to him, man. I think they're gonna max Diddy out as best. The judge is gonna max Diddy out as best he can, and I believe the indication that that's the direction the judge is trying to go is, I'm on, big homie. Come on, you can come in if you want to come in. Yeah, I'm on. I see you right there in YouTube. You got the link. I'm just talking about Diddy right now, but I'm finna wrap this up. We can go back on in a minute if you want to. But like that, with that being said, y'all, y'all, if you want to leave, drop a comment. Let me know what you think is ultimately going to happen. And Friday we'll chime back in, man, and catch up and see how this thing plays out, man. But I think right now, at this stage, right now, Diddy on his way to federal prison. I don't believe he's gonna get out of MDC and come home. He's going to prison. And with that being said, it's your brother Free. I'm with y'all, man. We're gonna do this more or less on a regular basis, man. Y'all continue to have a blessed day. Be safe, right? Keep your head on the swivel, man. It's a dangerous environment that we're living in right now. A lot of political hostilities and different things are happening. We are in the age and era of the professional assassin. Remember that. We are in the age and era of the